What do modern religions dream of? Many people go to different centers of worship in the world. What are the global dreams of these religions? The maps that divide the world into different religions are based on the majority represented in every continent and country of the earth. That doesn't mean that in those regions many other creeds are not represented. For the first time, we are reaching a time when the world is trying to unite religiously. That's the dream that many religions are sharing more and more. They do not know that men had a similar dream not long after the flood, according to biblical history. The story is recounted in chapter 11 of the book of Genesis. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. Let us pay attention to this terminology, because it is the same terminology employed today to unite the world politically and religiously. Then they said, at that time when the world was still young, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens." Again, let us pay attention to a city and a tower, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. The city represented the civilian authorities, the government. The tower to the religious authorities, to the temple. The ancient ziggurats or ancient towers were linked to religion. And by waiting to establish a city and a tower, they were wanting to form a political religious government. In other words, it was proposed that in that first empire in the world, civil government should be united with religion. And they pretended that this was going to be the only empire that was going to dominate the earth. That tower, we are counted, intended to reach the sky on its peak. When I was a kid, I remember thinking how dumb those men were trying to get to heaven with that tower. But I could understand later the figurative biblical language and rebellious spirit of the prince of this world that was represented in that tower. Men were wanting to climb at that time to the top and still above the clouds of heaven, above God himself. In other words, this was a language that involved an attempt to occupy the place of God here on earth through an earthly political religious government. Thanks to modern communication, the world seems to become ever smaller, and it is now referred to as a global village. Under the pretext that this world belongs to us all, they are seeking to unite with agendas that they want to impose on the whole earth, and in the background, they will end up by impersonating the creator of this planet. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building, and said, "If as one people speaking the same language, common speech, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them." Genesis 11, verses 5 and 6. Something equivalent is happening today. Globalization is a new experience. In the union of countries, religions, the economy, and others of society, many technocrats seem to work with a determination from which there is no going back. But does God really agree with that union? When the devil wanted to unite the world in Babel, God opposed and scattered them. Let's read how the book of Genesis expresses it. "Come, Let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city which contained the blasphemous and arrogant tower. Genesis 11, verses 7 and 8. Throughout history, we see how God was preventing and obstructing men's attempts to unite in great universal empires. When these empires reached the height of pride, God allowed other empires to appear to supplant them. This would continue happening until the day came when an attempt would be made to organize a global universal empire in rebellion against God. And we are entering that final stage, foretold in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Some modern ancient statements already assume that we probably not see the formation of the world government, but they believe that our children would see it. However, we are moving very rapidly in that direction. But the Lord scattered men soon after the flood, says the book of Genesis. And the book of Revelation warns us that God will break into three parts the new Babel or Babylon that men are building today and destroy it. Let's go back to Genesis. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth, Genesis 11:9. The devil wanted to unite men in a universal empire, and we see God dispersing that empire of evil. This was to happen until the world matured, and God gave this world to Satan for a short moment, that he might bear his worst nefarious fruit, so that the whole universe would be convinced of the malignancy of sin and of the true character of the rebellious angel. We are living in the time of the union of churches and the nations. In this picture, you can see a Catholic cathedral cut in the middle, pasted to another half of an evangelical Protestant temple. I extracted it from the book entitled Evangelicals and Catholics Together. In that book, they claimed that they were enemies, but ended up realizing that they have more in common than which separates them. That's what Babel's builders tried to do, to unite in a common speech at points they had in common. Which religions have a global vision? Let's start by considering the religions that have the whole world in their scope. What are the religions that dream of supremacy that is universal in scope? Which ones have geopolitical aspirations? First, let's look at traditional and state Christian religions. Let's start with the Roman Catholic Church. Catholic means universal. We Seventh-day Adventists are universal too, but not Romans, because our headquarters are not in Rome, but in heaven, in the heavenly temple where the throne of God is. All earthly administrative centers, in our case, are branches of the kingdom of God in heaven. We do not dream of going to a place on earth to see a supposed vicar of God and his Son, because, as the Apostle Paul said, our gaze is fixed on heaven, not on earth. The Catholic Church is centered in Rome, and they dream of putting the whole world under the primacy of Peter, whom they take as a symbol of the papacy. This is the main problem they have in achieving union with the other churches, because no other church believes that Peter was the first pope, nor that Jesus founded the papacy that arose several centuries later. With a desire for religious union, Pope John Paul II offered in a certain moment to put his papal authority on hold as steps were taken for unity. This was interpreted in Catholic milieux as a remarkable act of humility. But once the union was consummated, would he not pick up that alleged primacy of Peter again? Malachi Martin was a Jesuit priest who wrote a book about the dreams of many religions. And he highlighted in his book, The Kiss of This Blood, that the Roman Catholic dream consists in building a global political structure under the primacy of Peter, which God can bless. They dream again of a confessional Europe, and from there, with the legal imposition of their holidays on the whole world, in particular with the imposition of Sunday as a mandatory day of rest, a day which neither Jesus nor his apostles kept. They had a religious liberation from state governments. They slightly altered the language employed at the point of promoting, apparently, the separation of the church and the state. But in their view, civil or secular powers are not to meddle with the Roman Church, not prevent the Church from imposing their fundamental dogmas that they believe are part of the common good of society. Isn't that perhaps a way to return to the Middle Ages with a language that appears to be different but that is in practice the same? We'll see about that in more detail later. The Catholic Church believes that only by superimposing God onto the person of the Pope can the world achieve peace. But the papacy boasted political and religious primacy for more than 1200 years, and the popes didn't achieve peace because there were continual wars. Who can guarantee that if the papacy should regain world primacy, the result will be world peace? This is an utopian idea. Jesus said, "In the world ye shall have affliction, but trust, I have overcome the world." Therefore, our hope is not in the world, but in the liberation that will come from above, not from the earth. Let us consider the dreams of the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox are in Eastern Europe and were separated from centuries from Western Christianity due to the Muslim obstruction that dominated the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. As we saw in another message, Pope John Paul II believed that if the Eastern and Western churches were unable to keep themselves united throughout the second Christian millennium, it was because Muslims prevented it during the Middle Ages, as did secular communists in modern times in the rest of the Eastern Christian world. So, this Pope thought that all obstacles are now removed, paving the way for the union of both churches that had not been possible for more than a millennium. The Orthodox want to anchor their faith in the apostolate of Andrew, the disciple of the Lord who brought the gospel to the regions that are part of Russia today, and from there extended to the whole world. Here I must tell you that I am not fan of Peter or Andrew, Paul, Cephas, or Apollos, according to the controversy that occurred in the first century. Christ is the center of the church. It is very good to recognize the good work the apostles did, because they gave us the testimony we have of Christ today. But the Lord never commanded us to venerate one apostle over another, nor did they seek to be honored above others. They all sought to exalt Christ. The Orthodox do not dream of a primacy of Andrew like Catholics who want to put Peter above others, because for them Andrew was not Pope either. This is the reason why they do not accept a Catholic requirement to recognize Peter in order to join the Roman Catholic Church. In Russia, especially, the Orthodox are trying to recover from the terrible blow they received from Soviet communism in the 20th century. They venerate icons or paintings instead of statues. When you travel through Greece, you can see on the roads small monuments to the Virgin, not in statues and in Catholic countries, but in pictures. They were more exposed to the Muslim invasion, which condemned image veneration and therefore adopted an intermediate position. But whether the Virgin or the saints are venerated in statuettes or pictures, the idolatry that the Lord condemned in the second commandment of his law is the same. Constantinople in Greece became the second Rome when the Rome of the Caesars fell in the West, and in the year 476. In Rome, the popes replaced the Caesars. When Constantinople fell in 1453 under the Ottoman Turks, Moscow became the third Rome. They had a poor missionary expansion that was mostly gained by immigration to some parts of Africa and Asia. Again, we are not attached to an earthly center of our faith. Our headquarters is in heaven, where Jesus intercedes for us and before his angels, before the throne of God. Orthodox today don't have a central organization because history was not favorable to them. They were greatly subdued by Muslims for centuries and then by communism in most of the East, which interceded to drown out religions in general. Protestants appeared in the 16th century in Europe. They were preceded in the previous centuries by other movements which opposed Rome, which are now known as predecessors of the Reformation. Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, and several other reformers opened the door to a Christianity that founded his authority not on the Pope of Rome, but on the Bible. However, after the remarkable momentum of the 16th century, they gradually lost their spiritual power, and today they have turned more toward a social gospel. Nor do the Orthodox have a central organization, so they seek to identify themselves in the World Council of Churches, which promotes ecumenism. This council brings together more than 348 churches that are scattered in some 120 churches. For what purpose was this World Council of Churches organized? They want to unite the churches in points of faith common to all of them, in order to impose those points of faith on the entire religions and still secular world. They want to eliminate poverty and establish a new heaven and a new land where justice is promoted. They claim that the cry of the poor in the world has come to them and believe that this cry is to be heard and answered positively by the nations. I am afraid to hear what they say because they put themselves in the place of God, who said in Moses' time that the cry of his exploited people had come to his ears in heaven and came to the earth to deliver that people from the Egyptian bondage. I do not deny that the World Council of Churches has good intentions. But according to the Bible, who will free his people from the yoke of the great Babylon of the last days and establish new heavens and new earth? God himself. Only God can make a new creation, and this after destroying this world. We know that the bad stewards of this creation, be they political, economic, religious, or social, will not submit to the law established by the Creator for this world. And the worst thing under such a context, it is to become geopolitical, because they will therefore impose their own laws that are in various respects in conflict with the law of heaven. Our dreams are therefore placed in the new heavens and the new earth that God will create in the end, where justice will dwell, because only those who live in agreement with the law of God here on earth will be admitted into that divine kingdom. In Catholic circles, Muslims are often called angelists, because they believe that the angel Gabriel visited Muhammad and revealed to him the Quran. Although they believe in one God and also in the existence of Christ, they are not Christians because they reject the Gospels, the New Testament. Muslims are practically the antithesis of the imperialist dream of state Christian churches, such as Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants. For centuries, they were the terror of all these churches, for their advancement seemed impossible to restrain. Muslims still dream of submitting the world to the Quran, the religious book written by Muhammad, who was considered the prophet of the Arabs. I read that holy book for Muslims and analyzed it critically from a biblical perspective. One of their prominent dreams is to go to paradise, where they will be cared for in bed by beautiful maidens and eat and drink all kinds of meats and wine. In other words, according to them, there will be butchers in heaven. What is clear is that for them, death will continue in paradise, at least the death of animals. That's against what the Bible says. On earth, Muslims believe that they will eventually conquer the world. In order to impose the principles of the Quran on the whole world, radical Muslims resort to jihad or holy war. Holy war is justified for them until it triumphs over the world. Many of them, especially moderate Muslims, believe that their religion is peaceful, because in principle they don't attack unless they attacked first. But as they grow and invade new lands, they provoke the authorities of the country where they go to take measures against them as a justification to counterattack and rule those new countries. This reminds me when I was studying in a primary school in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We had to walk with my brothers several blocks to go to a Seventh-day Adventist school and then come back home. On the way, another older boy would usually come with us because he lived not too far from where we lived. We had to pass before a public school, and sometimes the older boy sent us to provoke other kids bigger than us. When those kids reacted and wanted to hit us, he fell upon them rashly to beat them, while accusing them of abusing younger children. That lasted until that published complaint, and action was taken against that older boy. Well, something similar has been done many times in history by Muslims. When they wanted to dominate a country, they created conflicting situations, and when the country's rulers intervened to bring order, they unleashed all their angry vengeance against those authorities to conquer the country. In Surah 8:40 we read, "Fight them until faithlessness is no more, and religion becomes exclusively for Allah." For those who don't know it, the Quran is divided in sections called surahs. Let us read in Surah 24:56. Allah has promised to those among you who believe and do good works that He will surely make them successors in the earth, and that He will surely establish for them their religion which He has chosen for them, and that He will surely give them in exchange security and peace after their fear. So on earth, Muslims believe that God has commissioned them to fight until they impose the Quran on the whole world, and only then they will obtain peace. But I sat beside a Muslim who was traveling back from Doha to the United States. I asked him if they could not achieve peace for so many centuries in all the sprawling territories they conquered, but continued to fight among them. How would they be able to live in peace once they conquer the whole world? He replied, "We don't know how these prophecies are going to be fulfilled." No, neither papal supremacy nor Islamic supremacy is going to establish world peace. Based on the Bible, we believe that only God will create a new earth and a new world where righteousness will reign forever, and not before destroying this cruel world. Only those who accept today the principles of that kingdom of heaven will be admitted to live there. According to the Quran, women will continue serving men in heaven as they did on earth. In other words, heaven does not seem to be beneficial to women because it does not make them dream of lying on a bed surrounded by many sturdy and gallant men. Is there also no room for the old ladies? In brief, for the Quran, polygamy will continue in paradise as it was for them on earth. Women are portrayed there as being always young, brunette with thick lips and bulging breasts, allowing men to enjoy carnal delights in paradise. He it is who has sent his messenger with guidance, a reference to the Quran, and the religion of truth, that he may make it prevail over all other religions. Surah 48:28, so that he may cause it to prevail over all religions, even if those who associate partners with God hate it. Surah 61:10. In their expansive dreams, Muslims embarked on the conquest of the unfaithful world and the rest of the non-Muslim countries in Africa, Europe, and Asia. The Quran also affirms that the Jews apostatized and that God therefore took away from them the land he had given them to bestow them upon the Muslims. That is why they hate the Jews so much, because the Jewish return to Palestine in modern times nullifies the prophecy of Muhammad. Let us now deal with ethnic religions as those practiced by Chinese and Japanese people. Confucianism comes from China. Its followers were persecuted by atheist communism. Judaism counted several millions in Europe. More than 6 million Jews were massacred by Nazism. Hitler said that for 100 years he was going to cleanse Europe of Jews. And more than 80 years later, his macabre prophecy is being fulfilled. Many countries of the world are again being populated with Jews. But as they become globalist, those ethnic religions tend to lose their identity. Fourth, let us consider the universal enemies in Asian religions such as Buddhism. Although these religions were in the day rather local in their scope, in recent times they are becoming global because they have found in the New Age movement a means of instilling their principles around the world. Among these pagan religions, Hinduism and Shintoism can be mentioned. The New Age brings together all kinds of supernatural practices as means of seducing modern man in the missive to unite the world. The New Age seeks to mingle all religions with these pagan practices. Within this New Age perspective are the apparitions of angels who do not identify themselves with any religion, but speak of a universal love without defining it well. Since the Catholic Church venerates angels whose names are not in the Bible, as for example the angel Raphael, Catholic authors can be found on the internet warning that not all angels are Catholic, but of the New Age. We Adventists are more protected from all these supernatural apparitions because we believe that the only one we have to venerate and address our prayers to is God. We must also be careful of not looking to force the opening of the invisible world, because by so doing we can be more easily deceived. God wants us, as the Apostle Paul warned, to walk by faith, not by sight. In other words, we don't have to live depending on supernatural manifestations, but depend on every word that comes from the mouth of God, as recorded in the Bible. Since many of the international conflicts between nations come from or are related to religions, the United Nations sought to form a parallel body called United Religions, aiming to help nations to establish peace. There are more than 2,500 religions in North America alone. We can clearly see that the final dream of religions and nations is peace they have not yet obtained. Here we see some logs which represent different religions. The Seventh-day Adventist Church first used the logo with the three angels of Revelation 14, but others had patented the same motif first. So our church prepared another logo that you likely are familiar with because it is found on the sign of every church, as you can see on the screen. In the logo of the United Religions, you can see the planet surrounded by the signs or logos of the main religions of the world. The United Nations and the United Religions have the same goal: to establish world peace. Is it a good goal? Yes, of course. And I believe that those who strive to unite churches and religions have the best intentions. But the Bible warns us that this attempt to unite at the end of the world is cunningly inspired by the devil, intended to deceive everyone. Sadly, those who work tirelessly to unite religions do not know the spiritual background of the great conflict between good and evil, between Christ and Satan. The fallen angel wants to completely dislodge God from this planet, to impose himself on this creation. A big problem found in the organization of the United Religions is that they want to impose a specific and unique religion, one that is plagued by hidden New Age principles. The Roman papacy has not looked favorably on that body that is a partner of the United Nations, because the popes want to lead that union. Now let us look at the fifth category of religions. It has to do with new religions that are considered to be parallel to Christianity. The Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and Church of Unification, etc. Jehovah's Witnesses deny the divinity of Christ. They hope to reign over the earth during the millennium after this world is destroyed. Years ago, I read in one of their books that they would be resurrecting their friends during the millennium, giving them a second chance. I told some friends with a certain irony that just in case it was preferable to befriend one of them so that he would not forget us and resurrect us in the millennium when the earth will be desolate. Some Jehovah's Witnesses today told me that they didn't read this view, which could mean that they are no longer distributing that book. Let us emphasize here that this world will be desolate during the millennium, with all the wicked dead. Satan will be chained without being able to deceive anyone, because the redeemed will be with Christ in heaven. Mormons claim that their prophet Joseph Smith wrote the Third Testament of Jesus because they believe that Jesus came to America and preached to native Indians who would have come from the scattered tribes of Israel. In consequence, Mormons claim that America is the new Zion. But the DNA samples have proven in recent times that the origin of indigenous people in America is unrelated to ancient Israel. Other frauds of supposed Abrahamic manuscripts that Joseph Smith would have miraculously translated have also been proven to have nothing to do with what that prophet wrote. Among some curiosities of Mormons is that they neglected the African continent. In recent times, they have been moderating that discrimination. In essence, they believe that the world will be set in order and that the millennium of peace foretold in the book of Revelation will be established on earth. There is also the Church of Unification, which was founded by certain Sun Myung Moon, who pretended to be the Messiah of Asia. He was a con man who was imprisoned in the United States, which he later appealed to as proof that no one had suffered so much as him in this world, proving that he was the Asian Messiah. Moon organized in life gigantic marriages of thousands of couples, mostly already married, and aspired to unite the world politically and religiously. Sixth, let us look at what some Catholic circles call pejoratively minimalist, because even if they are Christians and are represented by several millions in their denominations, they do not constitute a religious majority in the world. These are evangelicals such as Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, Pentecostal, etc. They don't have a central organization because they don't have a geopolitical agenda nor a political experience. Catholics, then, don't pay them too much attention. However, they have represented a significant threat to the papacy because until recent times they considered the popes as being the Antichrist. They continue to divide and do not dream of ruling the world, but of converting it to Christ. Today, evangelicals have been increasingly joining with state churches in common projects especially in social matters, and they have also been intervening in the politics of some nations. Currently, they are seeking the union of the churches because none of them separately have been able to reach the whole earth with their message. Let's ask ourselves now, will religions really unite? Will the Vatican succeed in uniting the world politically and religiously as it is trying to do now? Look at this book on the screen, written by the Jesuit Malachi Martin a few years ago. There, Martin projects the Roman papacy as being the winner in the context of the world domination disputed by communist and Western capitalist powers. Why does this author think the Pope is going to win? Because no one sees him as a real competitor, as he can hide his political ambitions in the mantle of religion. Now, let's look at what the Apocalypse predicted in reference to all this we are seeing. In Revelation 18:2, we are warned that Babylon, a symbol of Rome, would become a nest of every filthy and abhorrent bird. On September 23, 2000, the Vatican announced a convocation of representatives of 20 major religions of the world, a good number of them pagan. They came from 50 countries, and Pope John Paul II told them that this convocation was a decisive step in the moral reconstruction of the world. But I don't see in the Bible that God raised prophets to summon all the pagan religions of that time to gather in Jerusalem, to where the God of Israel dwelt, to rebuild the moral fabric of all the world. On the contrary, the prophets of the Bible always exhorted the world to keep the law of God, for divine revelation came from the temple in Jerusalem. On one occasion, the Lord called a prophet to warn the capital of the Assyrian Empire that it would be destroyed for not keeping God's law. But the most recent popes, and especially Pope Francis, have been summoning to the Vatican Muslims, Jews, and as many religions as possible, with the purpose of joining together in an ecumenism of the heart, since the Pope's view that theological ecumenism is more complicated. In other words, the Bible is set aside, and what is sought is a formal covenant to establish peace. Let's ask ourselves, should evangelicals and Catholics unite at all costs? They opposed each other for so many centuries. Why do they want to join now? Billy Graham, the greatest evangelical figure of recent times, on a visit to the Vatican, declared that Pope John Paul II was the moral authority of the world. Rick Warren is another famous preacher invited by more than one president to come before then for a session of prayer. He also visited the Pope and referred to him as our Pope. Whoa! The Pope is no longer being considered as the Antichrist in many evangelical circles. The magazine Christianity Today entitled in September 25, 2015, a provocative article when Pope Francis came to the United States, which read, "From Antichrist to Brother in Christ." Look at this picture with 100 Pentecostal pastors visiting Pope Francis. What are the purposes of ecumenical union? We will talk about this in the next lecture, considering the contradictions of modern ecumenism. Let me move forward here and tell you that they want to impose peace on the world, establish a just economic order, and universal justice. They also want to propose an ecology that saves the planet, our common home, from its destruction. and they aspire to liberate the world spiritually and materially. The last popes admired the United States because the percentage of religious adherents in that country is higher than in Europe. This is why they have been drawing closer and closer to America, seeking to involve evangelicals in their struggle against global secularism and support from the United States as the world's greatest power on earth. Beginning in the early 16th century, Protestants sought liberation from the papal Roman yoke. This movement was enhanced by the independence of the United States and the secular French Revolution at the end of the 18th century. But now, in the 21st century, it is the popes themselves who are calling on the Protestants and the other religions of the earth to unite to liberate the world from modern secularism. They strive for political and economic control, appealing to ecological problems, family needs, and any other possible justification for regaining religious supremacy. I was in the city of Venado Tuerto in Argentina, giving an evangelistic series that was at the same time broadcast by radio when I was asked to be interviewed by radio and TV. Toward the end of the interview, I told the journalist that the union of churches and religions would be a great thing, provided that the love of God was at the center of that union. The ignorant journalist smiled and told me, "But all the churches say the same thing." I told him, "No, churches are not keeping God's commandments today. Could you name a church for me that keeps all the divine commandments?" The journalist felt powerless because evidently he didn't even know the law of God. And the program was cut off right there, leaving the last impression in the minds of many people in the city, the question, could you name a church that keeps all the divine commandments? Dear friends, there will be no peace or stability in the world as long as God and His law are not at the center of the nations. The ecumenical trend is to set aside the Bible and instead make agreements on points that they hold in common. Enjoy pleasant concerts for peace, stretch hands with different creeds, etc. This will not work. Justice, peace, or security will not be obtained in this way in the world. Christian churches today want to unite to control globalization and impose to the world the common dogmas. And no matter how good their intentions, once they achieve unity, they will become exclusive. The result will be the announced apocalyptic intolerance against a minority who will not submit to principles that set aside the divine commandments. Revelation 12:17 says, "Then the dragon was enraged with the woman," the church, "and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus." This means that not all the Christian world will be saved, but only a remnant which, according to the book of Revelation, the devil will try unsuccessfully to destroy at the end. God will protect that remnant of the holy seed. The churches have adulterated God's commandments. They seem like merchants who always try to negotiate a discount. "No, Lord, 9, not 8, but not 10. Like a Paraguayan I met on a boat crossing the Uruguay River who recognized that Adventists keep God's commandments and told me that he was keeping them too. "Do you keep all of God's commandments?" I asked him strangely. "Well," he said, "there are actually 2 commandments that I do not keep." I asked him why, and he said, "Well, I think God will have to forgive me." No, my friends, that's not how true faith works. We must invoke the name of Christ to cleanse us from our sins, but that must fill us with the grace and power of God to obey. The great Babylon of the book of Revelation is the mother of harlots, of the repugnant abominations or idolatries of the earth. Babylon means confusion and refers to the final confusion that would be created by uniting so many contradictory beliefs in the world into a body where the Lord will not dwell. Only one remnant will be saved. They are portrayed again in Revelation 14, verses 4 and 5. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they remained virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And in their mouth was found no deceit, a reference to the heavenly investigative judgment, for they are without fault before the throne of God. While the Christian world pretends to love God, they are liars, as the Apostle John says, because they do not keep the commandments of God. This final remnant would demonstrate, however, their love for God by keeping his commandments. Seventh-day Adventists constitute one body, have a central organization, have the same faith and hope, and have a divine mission to prepare a people to stand at the coming of the Lord. Greatly, admirably, is the fact that they are all over the world, practically in every country on earth. In fulfillment of the Lord's command in Revelation 14:6, they are taking the final apocalyptic message to the world, literally to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. And the power of God manifests itself in such a way upon these people that that message is filling more and more the whole world with its glory. Revelation 18:1. Let us read now Revelation 18:4. The apostle wrote, "Then I heard another voice from heaven say, 'Come, let us gather with all the religions of the world with a hymn of love.'" Is this what we read in this last message of God to the world? No. God wrote, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues." Does God have people in the Roman Catholic Church? Yes. Does God have people in the Baptist Church? Yes. Methodist, Orthodox? Yes. In every church, God has children who honor him according to the light they have. But they will hear the final call to leave the predicted great apostasy of the Christian world. And many from them will join the remnant people of the Lord who are in every country of the world. What will they need to leave Babylon? John goes on to say, "So that you will not share in her sins." And what a multitude of sins are being uncovered today. "So that you will not receive any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes." Revelation 18, verses 4 and 5. The last message to the world is not a message to unite, but to leave Babylon. Leave that confusion of churches, religions, and the nations. Wrote Ellen G. White in her book, The Great Controversy, pages 606 and 607. Men of faith and prayer will be constrained to go forth with holy zeal, declaring the words which God gives them. The sins of Babylon will be laid open. The fearful results of enforcing the observances of the church by civil authority, the inroads of spiritualism, the stealthy but rapid progress of the papal power, all will be unmasked. By these solemn warnings, the people will be stirred. Thousands upon thousands will listen who have never heard words like this. In amazement, they hear the testimony that Babylon is the church fallen because of her errors and sins, because of her rejection of the truth sent to her from heaven. The book of Revelation tells us again in chapter 14 that only a remnant will be saved. They keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Dear friends, I want to tell you wholeheartedly that in this conglomeration of churches and nations, we can see the great purpose of the enemy of God to unite the world in rebellion against its Creator and Redeemer. This great confused gathering of peoples and religions will lead the world into its final crisis. And even if many have the best intentions, we know that this ecumenical plan will end in failure. I remember when I was about 9 years old, I saw a woman start calling a group of kitters. As they came, thinking she will give them love and food, she put them one by one in a burlap bag. When she had gathered 4 or 5, she saw a boy staring at her with big eyes and began to laugh. Suddenly, she shook the bag rightly. And what happened? Come, my beloved kitters, the devil is calling today. Come, let's sing together a song of love. And when the devil will get them all within, how will he laugh? But it will be too late to escape the snare. There will be, in Jesus' words, weeping and gnashing of teeth. There will be a people, the Revelation tells us, who will not allow themselves to be deceived because they will have been enlightened by the Bible, the Word of God. The devil will not be able to put them in his bag of confusion where he will gather so many people, so many religions, so many nations. The last remnant of the Lord will give the world the final divine warning message so that the remnant may stand united at his coming, keeping the commandments of God and having the faith of Jesus. They will be waiting for the Lord who will come to rescue them from this world, to carry them into his glory. The real liberation will come from above. It won't come from human beings. And God will impose his kingdom according to the Bible after destroying all the empires and kingdoms of the world. Only in this way can the eternal kingdom of the Lord be established, where justice and love will reign forever. Jesus is coming soon. Let us prepare to meet him. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for your warnings that we find in your word, especially in the book of Revelation. Help us to pay attention to what you want us, and help us also to prepare ourselves for the last crisis that is coming to the world. We want to worship you in freedom, especially when you will come for us to bring us to your home. In Jesus' name, amen.